Hey Book Dragons, welcome back to my channel. Glad you could be here with me. I've got a book review for you today, so let's get right to it. So I recently finished Foundation by Isaac Asimov, and this is an extremely foundational book, no pun intended, in science fiction. So many science fiction epics draw from it, and I could see little hints toward things that other sci-fi series have picked up from Foundation. So it's just a really widely known and loved series, and I'm sure there's people out there that don't like it as well, but I'm just really excited to talk with you a little bit about it and share some of my thoughts. So, but before we do, make sure that you're subscribed and all that fun stuff. Help me out, support my channel, and away we go. So Foundation is a very interesting book. It takes place over at least several hundred years. The timeline is not really given to you clearly in the book, but as you're reading through the book, it's very clear that it's taking place over several epochs of time. So the book starts out with a man named Harry Seldon, and he's a philosopher, he's a scientist, he's a mathematician, and he has come up with this scientific theory known as psychohistory. And he has gotten it down to such an exact science that he is able to predetermine what is going to happen in the future. So this takes place in a far future time in Earth's history, yes, but it's not really on Earth. It's at the point where humanity has expanded out into the stars and far-flung galaxies, and we've taken up residence on different planets, and a large galactic empire has been formed. And Harry Seldon is being sought after by the authorities for treason, essentially, because of his predictions via psychohistory. He predicts the fall of the Galactic Empire and the rise of what he has created called the Foundation, something that initially he sets out as a way to preserve the history of humanity, and that is their sole purpose. And so as you get into the story, you spend very little time with Harry Seldon. You do spend some time with him at the beginning, and he is visited by someone who has applied to be his assistant, and they meet and they kind of talk about his views and find out what he knows about psychohistory and if he's right for the position. And then we immediately go into a different setting where Harry Seldon is being questioned for his views and ultimately being accused of treason. So there's a very short section of the book that focuses on Harry Seldon's time and his predictions, and just some really interesting swordplay, if you will. There's a lot of politics involved in this book, a lot of political intrigue, which I love. It was really great stuff. But you spend very little time with Harry Seldon, and then it jumps about 50 years in the future, after the Foundation has been set up, and a group of people get together in this room and they watch a pre-recorded video cast of Harry Seldon talking about what's happened before in the previous 50 years, and showing them how all his predictions have come true, and then you time jump another probably at least 60 years, and the people who originally viewed the telecast of Harry Seldon are now aging, and they're they're trying to make sense and take care of this fledgling section of the universe that they've taken up residence in, and then it jumps even further in the future. So it's almost like a book of short stories, but they're all interconnected by the fact that Harry Seldon is the founding father of this human adventure, if you will, and he's laid out all these things in motion as if he were acting as fate. And so it's a really interesting premise. I've never seen a sci-fi story really done like this, and I can see why it's so popular. The character development is really, really good with some characters. I wish I'd known more about Harry Seldon, but I got enough that I felt like he was an integral part to the story. But I do wish I'd learned a little bit more about him. But some of the other characters in the story were much, much more well fleshed out. But even then, there's not a whole breadth of character development in the story because there's just not a whole lot of room. It's a short book. It's it's under 300 pages, and with the kind of story that Asimov was wanting to tell, there's not really a whole lot of time to develop the characters or really even to develop the world. I mean, you get introduced to different planets and worlds within this large expanding universe, but you never really get to spend time with any of them in great detail. Now, maybe that will come in future books. The Foundation series is like 7 books, so maybe Isaac Asimov will give us a little bit more as the series goes on. I don't know. But I think the strongest part of this was the suspense around the political arena, and how kings rise up and try to conquer, and they think they have everything going for them, and yet one little mistake can cause them to fall, and then other people rise to power, and just the interplay of the political personalities in this story is really what drove the story, I think, and really what made it so good. He is a master at writing the political intrigue. So I had a blast reading it, and I think that if I were to have the opportunity to read it again, which I don't know why I wouldn't get that opportunity, it's on my Kindle, but if I ever had time to read it again, I would take it, because it's one of those books that I can see maybe upon rereading it, I'd see even more little things that I missed before. And it makes me really curious for the adaptation that's coming out soon, because now that I've finished it, I keep thinking to myself, they've taken on a monumental task with this adaptation, and I wonder if it's really going to fly. So we shall see on that. But those are my thoughts on Foundation, guys. If you want a short sci-fi novel that is a really great introduction to a more expansive universe, has great characters, what little character development you actually get, the characters are really, really good, and the political intrigue is just out of this world, and it's really interesting to see what Asimov's version of humanity in the future looks like. There may be differing opinions on this, but I think, with a few exceptions, the story has aged quite well. I think it's there's still things in there that are futuristic enough that I would consider Asimov kind of a little bit visionary. Not totally, but there are things in there that I could still see in humanity's future in the long term. So I think for the most part Foundation has aged pretty well. But it is an older sci-fi novel, so keep that in mind if you're going to read it. But I highly, highly recommend it. I gave it a 4 stars. You know, it's not in my top 5-star tier, but it's definitely a 4 stars for me. And if you like sci-fi, you should really check it out. So I do plan in the very near future to have a geek out with my friends Carl and Pete over at Geek on My Sleeve talking about Foundation. So stay tuned for that, because I will be making more announcements about it. You'll probably see the announcement first on Twitter. So if you don't follow me on Twitter, please make sure you do. And let me know in the comments, have you read this book? What did you think of it? Have you not read it? Has it been on your list? And maybe now you're even more excited to read it and you're going to move it up your TBR, whatever that might be. Or maybe you tried it and you didn't really like it. I can see why it would not be for everybody, but I really had a good time reading it. So that's all I have to say on it, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for more content from me, and make sure that you are reading more books. I'll talk to you soon.